So we're starting with the project that already has a sound effects object. It's our Ice Gem Blast. So we're going to add another sound effects object. And instead of making the container first, we're just going to add the wave file directly. And Wwise will know that we're adding sound effects, and we have a drop down to give us an option if we want to change the import type, but we won't. So now we have our new object there that we can play called Gem Recharge. So currently Gem Recharge just plays a single wave file. And if we play it, we can hear that it has two parts, like a beginning whoosh and then kind of a magical sound at the end. So we're actually going to copy and paste and make this into two sound objects. But they're going to use the same wave file. So we're not duplicating the wave file. We're going to rename this object into magic. That's the end part that you see. And rename this part to whoosh. That's the intro whoosh. So you can see that in the red box, they both use the wave file Gem Recharge. So there's not a duplicate wave file. So we're actually saving space by reusing a single wave file for multiple purposes. So for each sound object, now we can change parameters on that object. And so when we change the pitch here, we're not changing the pitch on the wave file directly. We're changing it on the object. So we can change the pitch in whoosh, but magic would stay the same pitch. And with all these parameters, we can click on the little dot and make a random pitch adjustment. So I can hear that whoosh is playing at a variable pitch every time we hit play. All right, now we're going to tighten up these two sound objects. So whoosh is just going to have the initial part, and we can drag the boxes in our contents editor to adjust what part of the wave file we can use. And if you ever worked with a sampler, it's clearly the same concept. You can use part of the wave file. So now whoosh is just playing the beginning of the file, and magic plays the end. And we need to add this to our existing event. So we drag both of these into our event, and we can play them. And you hear that all three are playing. They're all three playing, but they're all three playing at the same time. So we can now go open up this sidebar that has some additional settings for each of these objects. And clearly what we want to do is adjust the delay time for each object. So even though this event is firing off, the objects within it will start at separate times. And you can adjust what settings you're seeing in your main property editor. So it'd be handy if you could see all the delays at once. And if you right click on that upper toolbar, you can set what kind of columns you want to see. So now it's easy to see. Easy to see what the delay values are. And now when we play, we're hearing three distinct start times for these objects. All right, now we're going to make another random container. And another way to add files is simply just drag the folder into your default work unit. And when you import it, it'll still give you options on how you want to import it. So we're going to be importing it as a random container. So change that top object type to random container. So if we click on this, now we see that folder contained 6 WAV files. And so in our contents editor, we can see that all 6 WAV files are there. And if we open in the Project Explorer, we can go through them to see the contents of each WAV file. And any settings you want to make on this parent container will apply to all the WAV files inside. So if we want to change volume on the entire container, then we just set the volume on that parent, and all the WAV files inside will adjust accordingly. In the contents editor, you can turn waves on and off. And if they're turned off, they won't be included when you build this project for inclusion into a game. So in this way, you can, even after you import, you can experiment with which actual WAV files are playing. And so now we're going to play with the random settings. So there's 2 types of random. There's random and shuffle. So I looked at this before, but again, randomization. Pitch is in cents. That's how we measure the randomization for pitch. And so now each of these will randomly play within that range, change the pitch because we're changing the setting on the parent container. And sometimes slight variations are hard to hear. And so if you make drastic changes, sometimes it's easier just to test that way. Just make sure that you're doing what you think you're doing. And then once you realize that, okay, I am affecting the pitch, then you can put it back in the more normal range. So kind of like the last thing we did when we broke up that whoosh and magic sound, we're going to create a copy of this container, this collection of sounds. And we're going to use one for the start sound, like the initial attack, and then one for the end kind of tail sound as we hear the gems kind of shuffling around the floor. So it's going to be the same concept. We're going to copy it, and the WAV files themselves are not copied. We don't have duplicate WAV files. We just have duplicate objects that are referencing the same initial WAV files. So we're going to rename these Gems breaking head, that's the initial hit. And gems breaking tail. It's now like the previous pass, we're going to go into each wave file and just take out the part that we want. And you can adjust the view depending on, what you need to see. There's options over there on the right. So now we're going to grab that square box and just drag the part that we want to play. And the top you can affect fading in and fading out by grabbing those arrows. So the arrow on the right is the fade out, and then the arrow on the left is the fade in. And the reason we want to fade out is to make sure that we're not having any clicks on the end of the file. It's always good practice to just confirm that there's a zero crossing at the end of the file, at the end of the region. And now we're going to do the same when we make the tail. So now we grab our box, select the part we want to actually play, and we grab the little triangle box at the top for our fade in. So now we're going to make a single container that's going to play both of these objects. And it's a sequence container. So we've had random containers before, and now we have a sequence container where we can control the sequence and how these objects play back. So we selected the two, and we created a new container. And we can now see that our two objects that we made are now inside our parent container. And we're going to drag our random containers into the playlist. And that defines the order that these objects are played in. So now when we hit play, we will hear the items in the playlist. So with the current settings, every time we hit play, it just plays one of the items in the playlist. We actually wanted to play all the items in a row. So we are going to adjust our sequence settings. So we make sure our gem drop is selected. Then over on the right, we want play mode to be continuous. So now you can see that second collection, a random element plays after the first collection is done playing. So it waits for that wave, for that region to stop playing the first collection, then plays the second collection. And another built-in Wwise feature that is available to us is we can insert silence if we want to. So let's say we want just a touch of silence between those two random containers. We can create a new container type, a new object type. So we create a normal sound effects like we would sound effects container. And we're going to name it silence. And then we can add a built-in Wwise source called silence. And when we do that, you can see that the default duration is 1. So wherever we place this, it will have 1 second of silence. So that's probably too much in our instance, so we're going to take that down just a bit. 0.25. And honestly, I probably should make this random as well. I didn't in this example, but random here would probably might be a good thing. So now we drag it into the playlist, and if we don't get in the right exact spot, we can just drag it into the spot we need. Now we insert it between the head and the tail. So now you can see it stops on that silence node for just a moment before it moves on. So that we've done all this great work, we want to add this to our event that we already have. So we're still working with the same Fire Ice Gem Player event. And we're going to drag our gem drop. And it automatically gives it the play action. So now we have 4 objects in here. And of course, we want to adjust the delay time for this gem drop so it doesn't play right away. Put the delay at 0.4. If we want, we can sort by delay if we want to see the order in which they're actually playing in. Again, we can make the delay variable if we want, randomize the delay time. So here I had actually pinned this is where we can see the log of everything that's playing back. So now we can see all the material, or all the events that are being triggered, the delay times. So it's important to be able to log these things. You get so many variations that when you can see it visually like that, you can tell what's actually happening when you're playing. So that's a key part.